This has been quite an impressive morning, I have to say, with all the different take on, right, the kind of the political, the historical, the intellectual aspect of landscape. I guess for me, this afternoon, I would trying to bring it back to what we do at the office. How do we work with this Toronto phenomena? And as an introduction, I'd like to start my presentation by asking like this devinette or a riddle to the audience. This came out a month ago when I was invited to conduct a seminar at Michael McBuckleberg at the Graduate School of Design on creativity. And this little question came out from the students of a very acute student. And Michael wrote me an email telling me this kind of joke. And that joke came from the whole day of discussion, and I did talk about two of my mentor, which one is Frederick Law Olmsted, and the second one is Martha Schwartz. So I think this is extremely appropriate in a way to set the tone of what we're going to review 3 projects this afternoon. So the question is, what do you get when Frederick Law Olmsted and Martha Schwartz have a baby? The student said, so I think it's actually quite appropriate. And I never thought that way, but watching someone analyze your work is quite interesting. So because we've always been, in my team, we're very much interested in urban projects, and people also, and we're interested in people who love their city. And then we're very committed to this, and we're interested in history, but we think that history is living material, and it's not just a mere copy. And also we work with this notion of optimism and humor. So when I did my master at the GSD, I had the chance to study Olmsted. And the great thing about it, and I took the time to realize that this guy was a journalist first, and quickly realized that all of his landscape was actually artificial construction, but with the image of idolized nature, with a clear social intention to cure the industrial city and to bring the experience of nature to city dwellers. He traveled throughout Europe, and then he borrowed from the English picturesque, who was created for private endeavor, and brought it in America and turned that into kind of a public landscape. And then the notion of experienced nature was very much part of what he was doing. And I guess I understood that now what we do is about experience the city. So it's very applicable 150 years later. And then in the 80s, come along Martha Schwartz, right? With her background of visual art and making landscape, but instead of using nature, she used the visual art as a reference into which she made that. Two total different outcomes, both constructed landscape, one with reference of nature and one with reference of culture. So in the office, I think we borrow from both. And they are somehow our model, and that's why Schwartz and Olmsted have had tremendous impact in our work. This afternoon, I will present quickly three projects within a 12-year span, and it's quite interesting that we learn from what we do, and learning from, first one is HTO, from HTO applying, being some rule, some element that we were successful, and then applying that in a higher degree at Sugar Beach, and then from Sugar Beach to Berg Sea Park in the old part of Toronto. So this is Toronto Waterfront. That's 12 years ago, 2003. It's a competition that we did with Janet Rosenberg and Ari Panterini. And I guess the idea of it's quite simple and as a kind of a clear idea. This is when Paris Plage was happening in 2002, the beginning of a kind of a new way of celebrating summer in cities, closing traffic along the Seine River for 2 months, bringing chairs, sand, umbrella along for people that have no place to go during the summer, and bringing this notion of the democratic use of public space in the city. So in Toronto, we have the downtown that 12 years ago, with this kind of intense living and on the other side facing Lake Ontario, which is that kind of a peaceful element of experience of nature, and the Toronto phenomena, which is onto a lake. So within this, the program by which we built that beach, we borrowed from a Seurat painting of An Afternoon at La Grande Jatte, and this is 1884, but it's still quite applicable. We have this feeling of silent urbanity, a very democratic use of the shore. Everybody's looking towards the horizon, shade, sun. There's a kind of this notion of timelessness, and I think that was the program by which we came up with this idea, this first urban beach that was permanent. Looking at some postcard image, 1910, this phenomena of wanting to be next to the water is a kind of a natural thing that was current. There will always be current, and it's something that people want. The cross-section, we just capped the quays with weeping willows and adding the umbrella at the end. That was done before the creation of Toronto Waterfront. That was happening between 2003 and 2007. And I guess one great lesson that Janet taught me is that you should never hang your skates, right? Because in a way of making things, sometimes it's difficult, but you need patience and perseverance, and then you can get there. So you get to the dunes to go to the water. Very simple concept. The idea of it is always this experience of nature, but within the city. And then just high enough that you don't see the water, but you tease that you know what something's on the other side. And as you get across with the kind of dunes, made dunes, you have the yellow umbrella at the other end. That gets you through the trees, and then you know that you're going to have the horizon of the lake, and that takes you in, like the Seurat painting. Then when you are there, there's a kind of peacefulness and that experience of what that tableau was as a kind of thing that you are. You're not in the city anymore, but it's just behind you. And then you get to the water. I guess sustainability and ecology is always part of a thing, but it's never the kind of element that we put forward. There's always this notion of poetry. There's a kind of a very strong narrative that somehow resonates to the context in which we are. So from 2007, the second project that I want to talk about, it's the Sugar Beach, right? Learning of what we did at HTO and trying to go further with this idea. And then this is a commission that and I think Sugar Beach has turned out to be almost like a monster, right? It's something that we never thought would have that much impact. In a different context, with the same idea, but we are now next to the Red Pat Sugar Factory, into which this kind of industrial is part of the city, and it's something that's, right, it's what the city is about. And then making a reference again to Seurat, but changing it from the downtown center of Paris, but moving to the suburb in Asnières. You have the same phenomena, but as you see in this tableau, in the background, you have the industry of the suburb in Paris. But again, this idea of enjoying a kind of a peaceful moment during the summer day, the river or the lake. So within this, there's a kind of a second beach came along with the exact same idea, but adapted to the context into which we are. And next to Red Pat Sugar Factory, we have, when they unload the sugar, they have this kind of a sweet breeze that everything gets sugar-coated. So this is this notion of the Sugar Beach and the kind of color scheme that we brought in. At the competition, quite simple, but complex in itself, right? The representation is just juju and twigs organized to create a park that has a kind of a magical power. And building into the West State and Detroit House of Hillier master plan on the corner, trying just to tuck the promenade and allowing a room for the beach on the corner that would actually have the view towards the lake, but also a view with the downtown and embracing the industrial current history of the city. So the juju became the color change. We just went this kind of a light pink with the promenade of West State and Detroit that just was reorganized, and simply just trying to get the program going simply juxtaposed on that 2-acre site. I think it has been very well embraced by the city, but as we were doing this, we worked with Planning Partnership on that, and getting the approval for that was a little bit difficult. The umbrella was designed with Andrew Jones that we worked with, and then during the design review process, the umbrella was not flying very well, and we thought that we were pretty convinced by the power of what the universal aspect of what a beach is. So at the Christmas, where the umbrella was turned down, we sent this for Christmas card, 500 of those. And they were saying that the umbrella were not big enough to get like families underneath, so we thought if the Holy Family can fit underneath, maybe it would be good for everybody in Toronto. So we were able to get them back on track, and they trust us. And then the notion of pink was also bringing with this notion that pink has meaning in color. Color is political, color has meaning, and then using the Jackie Kennedy pink, bring this notion of elegance, timelessness, and right, just it's not about gender, it's about something else, it's a mood, and Toronto is actually changing. Toronto is not the male city that we used to know, or when I was a student here in the 80s. Toronto is moving along. So by the Waterfront embracing this was a huge, I think, move forward of saying that we're going somewhere. So the city in the background, the industrial and the leisure combined together. The lake, the horizon, again with the Surratt, and this kind of experience, or the homestead or Schwartz that has that kind of element within this, but the notion of urban pleasure that somehow fits within the site. This notion of theater that takes place when the boat comes in, departs, but there's a kind of a busyness, quietness, watching people being watched. It has a very much of what cities are about. When we develop those sites, this notion of quality is a kind of an important thing. And then within this, we have promenades that you can have fire trucks, but allow trees to grow within this, and each tree has 30 cubic meter of soil. And within almost in 5 years, the tree is going to touch, and it's going to create this amazing promenade where shade and sun cohabit together. And the growth within this, with the sand, the weeping willows, just the iconic element that address this beach phenomena. The rock, taking Toronto as a precedent as well, with the at Ryerson, the big rocks in the pond, and the one at the Cumberland Park, and trying to create companions for all these and bring this Toronto, not the Toronto, but Ontario cottage phenomena that Adrian Gers was talking about when presenting the Toronto waterfront. And then, of course, with this kind of a sugar-coated element, then the construction plays off on that theme. I believe in media, and I would say at day one, Sugar Beach was ready for media. It has obtained tons of publication, dealing with many aspects, and what I like about this is that Sugar Beach has got outside the realm of architects and urban designers and landscape. It's kind of, it has been taken by the public. It expressed the temperature, fashion, it brand tourism, film, selling plane ticket at Porter, right? And then 4 years come down with the city councillor who started questioning the value spent on the beach. And debate got going, very interesting. And then Sugar Beach became the hero in 2014 to be nominated for demonstrating the difference between cost and value within the city. So this is the before and after shot. Third one, Berg Sea Park. Things that we've learned at Sugar Beach is this kind of phenomena that it's hard to describe, but it touches people's emotion. So we've been mandated to redo Berg Sea Park. Berg Sea Park is the first park that was done in the 80s behind the Flatiron building, very iconic building. And as you see, It's a kind of a remnant of the old Toronto. And as the city evolved, you see the kind of a densification that takes place. And also in the 70s, almost a disparition, almost getting rid of all the old architecture. And now, within the same site, we have this total densification, where you have downtown residents with children and dogs, you have office worker, and then we have tourists and metropolitan visitor, and they want to make a huge use of that park. But the park is very small. This is where Woodstock used to take place. Phenomenal event in the city. We work with Friends of Berg Sea Park, with stakeholders that was led by Pam McConnell, the city councillor, which is a huge hero of making change in the city. Families who wanted a park for their children, or the dogs, because we have up to 1,500 dogs per day visiting the park. And the park being small, but it has many other parks around. And I think within the small park, you cannot carry for everything, but somehow you have to adjust the equation to make sure that everybody fits in there. 1978, the kind of the beginning of urban design in Toronto, with the first park behind at Berg Sea. 40 years of age, deteriorated, but people love their park. So within this, through a very transparent manner with the stakeholders, we assess the quality of the trees. We're going to keep only 8 of 88 trees, because the planting techniques then were not to where we are now. It's this notion of bringing value again back into a space. So the existing park, people wanted to keep their park as it is, basically. So this kind of a new shape, taking into account the kind of a similar composition within that, and bringing back trees like we did at Sugar Beach, that they're going to grow and they're going to become as big as we have at Queen's Park. But not trees that after 40 years are still only 6 inches diameter, and a kind of a canopy that it's not showing well. So within the Silver Cell, again, and then embracing the kind of a theater on the south, and the children, the dog, and the people. So within this, I just want to bring one last detail about the fountain in the middle, which is actually this kind of issue within the city, dogs, right? So that's the beginning of our presentation, that we just wanted to do this fountain that would bring the kids, the tourists, the dog owners, and the resident as a piece in the center. And when we present that to the city, they said, dogs are not used in the fine arts to create something that will resonate long term. Well, we did a little bit of homework, and we did challenge them. And dogs is actually quite an amazing thing within the history of 5,000 years in the making of art. We found a tableau of Berg Sea with his dogs, and the flagonard, and that romantic moment, right, of the dogs. They're everywhere in museum, and it has a kind of a political take on that as well. With Fala at Washington and with Roosevelt Monument, Queen Elizabeth with her corgis always going to meetings, and Beau with the Obama family. So just to say that the city actually got it, and they said, yes, let's go for it. So this is the fountain as we have produced, working with Dan User, phenomenal guy, just make things happen. So we have this water trough at the base of the basin with the continuous business that we started at Four Seasons with the basin, trying to complete with that and bringing the dog tag, the dog spike of colored around the Victorian element, and making forward history, and the pugs where the water goes back into the bowl. And of course, the pièce de résistance is the bone on top that somehow bring the raison d'être for this. And in the public meeting, people said it's just about dogs, what about cats? So, we just brought one cat looking away, and those are the participants in the fountain and the mechanical system, and the park construction should start September 1st, right after Pan Am. So, all right. I will stop there. I just want to say that alone, professionals can't do much. neither the city or neither developer. I think together, with the win-win attitude, we can make big change. And with this notion of commitment, risk-taking, and also the important thing, it's the courage in our idea and working together. Thank you.